Well, hey, balls of magic. Welcome back to our podcast. It's been a hot second. My name is Alex. My pronouns are they, them, and you are listening to How to Be Queer.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
It's Kim.
I know you're right across from me. So amazing.
You're doing a good job of keeping it creepy today.
Ugh.
Hey, it's Kim. My pronouns are she, her. Welcome back to How to Be Queer. It's been a minute.
It has. We're back.
We kind of just like took a little bit of an intentional pause, which felt awesome.
A cocoon, a reordering. And here we are.
Did you know, just this is coming up in our life. Do you know that tomorrow? So I don't know when you upload this stuff. I actually don't know anything about how you make all this work. You basically put the headphones and microphone in front of me and then like you do all the things. But did you know what tomorrow is? It's November 12th tomorrow because we're recording this on the 11th. Happy Veterans Day, by the way. Thank you for all who serve. I definitely, because you serve, you grant us a lot of freedoms, which I exercised on Tuesday by voting. Still waiting to find out about Bobart. Anyway. Do you know what tomorrow is? The 12th?
Is it Little Magic House?
No. Well, it's we legally got married. We signed. We went to the DMV, which is, I mean, it's so romantic, but that's where we signed our marriage license.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, I guess we're coming up on a year.
Yeah. So tomorrow's our 1 year official legal
anniversary. Hey. How do you want to celebrate that?
Well, I have a few ideas.
Okay. I am now going to just say this podcast is not meant for children.
No.
This is an adult. And today is going to be.
And maybe if you are our parents, you could just,
Yeah. Let me just say that because our parents listen. Your mom listens. And
I mean, if you really, it's on you. You're just going to hear stuff that we're all adults. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna say mom and dad, like give this one a skip. I'm good with retaining some of the mystery in our life.
Noted.
But this is an official message of our podcast is not meant for under a certain age. Language, we're explicit, and today we're going to talk about some stuff that is really about sex and about bodies and I see, Alex, you have a title here, which is Sex During Midlife and Coming Out.
Yeah, I just tried to
kind of what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Do you want to do our sponsor talk really quick?
Yeah, we got to give a shout out to our sponsor, Youth Scene. Go over to their website, youthseen.org. Click on the donate button. Throw them some cash. Give them some support because giving your money is just one way to show that you support this work that they do. And so thank you, Youth Scene. They're supporting and providing resources and education and mental wellness to the QT BIPOC and LGBTQ community, to youth and their families. And they rock.
Thank you, Youth Scene.
And thank you. Okay. Dr. J.
How do you want to start this one? Do you want me to start by the conversation I was having with you this morning?
I think that'd be a good lead into. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to share, it's story time. I'm going to share a little bit and I'm going to close the door behind me. I'm going to share a little bit of just my personal story, which if you've been listening to this podcast, you know, but maybe you joined us halfway through and you don't know. But I am a middle-aged, mid-size mom of two. And what do I say when I say mid-size? I'm neither skinny nor fat. I am just that body type that's like right in the middle. I wear a size, I'm proudly saying this, I wear a size 6. And somewhere in my head along the way, I was told that a size 6 was fat. Thank you, Heather from middle school, who told me that because my thighs touched, I was overweight. I still have a bias against that name.
We don't like you.
I don't like you. We still don't like you. You tried to friend me on Facebook too. That's a no.
Oh, hell.
That's a hard pass. Anyway, I'm going off here, but I think, in sharing a little bit and being really, vulnerable and open is that, I've told this story in here before that when I was about 19 years old, I had kind of started to figure out things weren't working out for me in the heterosexual world. I knew from probably a pretty early age looking back that I was a lesbian, I was queer, but I didn't have a lot of the language to understand that. So I kept trying to be straight and it was not working out well. And then I had a friend in college who did come out, and I believe she came out as bisexual, and she had been in a relationship with a woman And she was the first person that I told. And kind of like bumbled my way through another couple years, had some experiences that confirmed it for me. Like, this is why heterosexual sex isn't feeling good. Like, I am gay. I tried to come out of the closet. It did not go well. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do the best that I can to stay in the closet and just shove this down as deep as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't work out. It did not work out me doing that. And I ended up spending about a 13-year period, essentially celibate. So I didn't have really, I just didn't, I mean, everybody knows what celibacy is. It's that you're not, you're not having sex. I had intimacy, and there's lots of different ways to experience intimacy. You experience intimacy in friendships and relationships, but to actually say like I was engaged in a sexual relationships, well, no, I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, and this is kind of what we wanted to talk about today, is I met Alex, and I was like, well, this celibacy thing is not gonna work. This isn't going to work. I wish I could say people that I had the bravery to, just come out as a celibate lesbian. I didn't. I think that you were a catalyst for me to be like, okay, you are either going to just be yourself and own this, or you're going to spend the rest of your life celibate and kind of unhappy. And I think what I recognized is that there are, I know, well, actually, more than just me, women that choose celibacy or think that they're choosing. So I was a woman that I thought, hey, I'm fulfilled enough. I have wonderful career. I have financial stability. I have amazing friendships, a lot of intimacy in my friendships. I've got great relationship with family, kids, mom, like my life, it is headed in this direction, but I have this one bucket, if you will, that is just, I'm okay with that bucket just never being fulfilled. Right. And I hear a lot of people say that everything else in my life is going okay. If I don't meet somebody, it's all right. And so I lived in that bucket for a really long time until I met somebody that I'm like, oh no, I can't deny this. And here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of what I think we wanted to talk about today is, so there's the backstory. And I'm going to share with our listeners what goes through my head was I am a middle-aged, mid-sized body who has given birth twice. And I am now going to take my clothes off and engage in a sexual relationship with someone who is a fitness professional and has 17 abs and had not been celibate for a really long time. And the anxiety that I felt on multiple levels, like, went through the roof. And so what we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about today is, because listeners, we get your emails. Mm-hmm. We know that this is something our listeners have been saying to us is, hey, I'm a midlife person. I am trying to come out of the closet, but I have an awful lot of anxiety about how, especially if you're a person who has been celibate for a long time, how in the world do I jump back into bed with somebody and also maybe experience queer sex for the first time? Ooh, that was a mouthful.
Yeah.
What do you think, Alex? What do you think because I mean, you've been with me in this journey, and I know I've said things to you over the years that you kind of look at me and you're like, oh, Kim.
Well, I think what's popping up is that the power of when you meet the right person, you truly can begin to heal together.
Yeah.
And you engage in a new adventure, a building of life in an extraordinary way that you've never experienced before. And that doesn't mean it's not terrifying,
yeah,
and vulnerable and like awkward and scary, but it's also like, but this is so right and so true and real. And there's nothing I want more. And so I think that's what's so amazing. One of the things that's so amazing about you and me.
I know we're sitting across the table. You all get it. You all keep coming back and listening to us. So you probably can imagine the facial expressions that happen across our table. Hi. So can I ask you, I do want you to share, I think, a little bit on this part, because I think what I felt when I was in my early 20s, right, is that is it seems more socially acceptable to experiment with queer sex, with bisexuality, with, hey, I'm pansexual, I'm trying to figure it out. It seems to be more socially accepted when we're younger. And then as we get older, it's not so much. And so I know that there's a lot of people that hit midlife and they're like, man, this is in me. I know this is in me, but maybe they haven't. I hate to use the word experiment, but I don't know that I know a better word. And so one of the questions that I think we get is, how in the world do I start having that conversation? If I identify as female and the person that I'm, feeling like I want to do stuff with them, maybe has body parts that we tend to assign with the same as ours. I'm trying to figure out the exact most inclusive way to say that. So folks, forgive me if I bumble over my words a little bit here and don't get it right. But Alex, you had that experience in life, right? Where you understood at least a little bit of your sexuality, but you did have a lot of, I think, people who identified as women wanting to, I don't want to say use you, I don't want to put your words in your mouth, but you have told me before that you felt like people would kind of almost look at you like an experiment.
Yeah, I think what ended up happening, and I was listening, I was thinking as you were talking, and I was taking in that back to that healing piece of like, based off of what we learned as a kid about what our body can do or not do, or what it's made for or not made for. There's a lot of like trauma there.
Yeah.
And so I was navigating my gender identity and my sexuality. And what I ended up doing was lacking a lot of boundaries for myself. But it's so the kind of it, and this sounds, I guess this is the easiest, shortest way to say it. It was like, I could kind of just threw myself around like, well, I'll try this or I'll try this and I'll figure this out. And now realizing that but I called it like, well, I'm just free and I'm just an open book. And actually I was deeply I was miserable. I was trying to heal a lot. And so these messages about, my body parts and then being in an abusive relationship, marriage for a while, and then having, sexual abuse in my childhood, and like all of it breadcrumb trails to how I ended up treating my body. And then it's no surprise to me. Then I get into a profession that I'm trying to every day heal bodies and myself. And just wanting, and then especially with you as my intimate partner and wife, and you just want to be able to create that space for yourself and for you. And it's a collaborative.
And I kind of like joke with you about this sometimes. And listen, we're married, so you build the trust to be able to joke and stuff with each other. But I had said for a long time that I felt, when women would look at you because you were just masculine enough, that it was. I kind of felt on some of the things that you told me, where I understand what you're saying. Like, you didn't know what healing was, right?
Yeah.
And so you would use your body to connect with people.
Yeah, I was using it for validation and extra. Yeah,
right. Which is part of your healing that you're doing now.
Yeah.
But also that, I think for a lot of queer women sometimes, especially, and I'm speaking to my middle-aged, because I think from everything I understand about generations that are coming up, this could be very different. But I think a lot of women my age, whether it's your first coming out or your second coming out or something you've known about yourself for a really long time, there's an aspect of your identity that is just masculine enough, right? And I joke with you about this, and I call you the gateway gay, right?
Yeah.
It feels like really safe to be attracted to you because, well, number one, you're magnetic and you're beautiful and you're all the things that you are. And you're also just masculine of that center. So that I kind of felt like you had people sometimes engage with you in your body that were like, they didn't want to jump full down into queer town.
Yeah.
Right. And like you were their gateway to get there. But inevitably, I think that left you feeling really hurt and harmed.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the time that, you know, that
Oh,
a,
talk
a
about it.
group of a group of women that thought that they were giving me a gift of like a lap dance and put me out in the middle of a room on a chair, and they is that kind of like
Yeah,
what you're
yeah, yeah,
talking about? I mean,
yeah.
we're just gonna kind of
Go
go,
for that
we're
story.
gonna let it yeah, thinking that, people had known about my queerness, and then I was just like, and that because I danced as a stripper in college for like a few months. And then I also was a drag performer. Like I was really open, but I also wasn't really aware of like who I give access to.
Okay.
Like that was a part of my boundary that I had not learned at that point. Like I don't need to tell everybody everything because I don't know what they're going to do with that information about
Right.
me.
Okay.
And what ended up happening was I was in a room full of like 60 people of a class I taught, and there were people from the class, and they put me on a chair and said, "Happy birthday, here's a lap dance by different members of and they thought it, and I wanted to kill all of them and run away. Like,
Did you do that thing where you're like, oh my God, just like grin and get through it? Or did you say something? I can understand grinning because I think we all do that. We're like, oh my God, just make it end.
yeah, I mean, I froze. Like I like
Yeah.
my body froze up, and I felt violated. And I'm like, I don't, because I am so energetic, and my body now
Mm-hmm.
is so sacred, and I am very intentional about where I put my body and who I give it to and what I do with it. And then I at that point was like, just freeze and let it happen,
Oh, honey. Yeah.
you know,
I'm so sorry
because
you had that
I was so used to that.
experience. Yeah.
But so didn't, yeah, I sometimes I wonder if I wasn't masculine of the center, if my presentation would affect how would my experiences would have been different.
Well, I think that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying is that I have witnessed where there's and also that sometimes people in their allyship show up really strangely where they're like, oh well, I'm so attracted to you, see, I'm okay, I'm an ally, and I'm like, that's actually not allyship at
Not
all.
at all.
Like, you don't need to tell us you're down with gay people by telling us that you're attracted to gay people or about what gay women or gay people do. Like, that's not
Right. I mean,
allyship.
that just plays into the narrative and the stereotype about
Us being over
us being over
sexualized.
sexualized. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I find all of that super fascinating because we've been, in fact, we were at a party within the last year where there were some women there and they started to get tipsy. And I'm like, y'all are just getting a little too close.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, is it that, people that non-binary and then a lesbian and people obviously, listen, sometimes people, we can tell the hidden things that you think are hidden that are coming through, especially when we mix a little alcohol in there. That's where I'm like, and I kind of want to bring this back, but I'm mentioning all of this because when we talk about, like, if you are a midlife person and you're like, I really want to come out, but I don't want to make it feel like I am using people as an experiment, we're giving you examples of what feeling like an experiment feels like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to say, like, there is a huge difference between I am coming out of the closet, I want to try dating, or maybe I'm, pan or I'm bi, but I'm feeling a real genuine attraction to women. And I've never allowed myself into that space versus using people as an experiment. Like, so I'm hoping that by giving these examples, we can start to lay out like, look, don't go to a party and when there's a gay couple there, think, hey, this is a free for all for me to be flirty and start touching them and invade their personal space.
Mm-hmm.
That's experimenting with your sexuality in a way that is not going to feel appropriate, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have a person who is a performer or is leading a class or does a lot of, like you do, Alex, like life coaching, getting people into their bodies, that is not an appropriate space for you to start feeling out, experimenting with your sexuality. That is what an experiment would be.
Yeah.
That is what treating a person of a queer identity to try it on. That's the ways it's not appropriate. But let's talk about the ways it is appropriate, because that's more of what we wanted to talk about today. Now that the experiment of experiment side is out, right?
Yes. And this would require it feels like it would require some a higher level of awareness of yourself.
Well, and that's where I go to alcohol, right?
Oh.
So there's times that I think alcohol has, you and I absolutely love having our alcohol together in ways. But, what I've noticed is that when we are a queer couple and we show up in really heteronormative spaces and people have had just enough alcohol, that's sometimes where I'm like, baby, it's time to go.
Yeah.
Right. Because they
start to lean into us like, oh, you guys are amazing
and you're both so pretty and and I'm like, why is your husband in the corner of the room staring at us?
Right? We gotta go.
We're out. So that would be the side of like the experiment. I believe everybody's got a little bit of queerness in them. Like, have the self-awareness to know how yours is showing. Like, we're not here for your entertainment. I'm not here for your entertainment. I love that song.
I know, totally.
Okay. But if you, and there's a reason I told this story in the beginning, and this is something Alex and I talk about a lot, is so here I am, I'm a middle-aged, mid-sized mom who's given birth to 2 kids. And I've obviously, Alex is not the first person that I've experienced having queer sex with. I have had my share when I was younger. Which I probably would have said, well, I'm just experimenting and trying to figure things out. No, I had it figured out. I was just too fucking scared.
Yeah.
So then I remained celibate for a really long period of time. And now I am that person that I'm like, I'm going to come out and I'm going to experience what sexual intimacy is. And I was fucking terrified. I was terrified. And I know that because we get your listener mail, I know that this is fairly common. So I guess what we want to talk about is how to kind of break that thing in your head of like, but I don't want somebody to think that I'm using them as an experiment. Like, what does that look like? And then what does it look like to return to your body?
Yeah.
And so you and I both had to return to our bodies for different reasons. Okay. So does that all make sense what we're doing today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're establishing energetic contracts.
Oh shit, you're going to walk me through that. We're going straight to the energetic contract.
Well, like when you said, when you said, talk about some things, people, what people can do to like, so if you're like, okay, I'm queer, I want to experience these things. So like, or
I'm feeling like there's queerness in me.
Yeah. And there's absolutely, I think, ways to being able to communicate to yourself and then being able to communicate with the person that you're going to be with versus just like, let me get, instead of getting drunk and hitting on someone or making a queer couple or a queer person uncomfortable, being like really upfront and being like, I've never done this before. I want to experience, not experiment. And then you're both going into that environment of like, maybe this is going to work and maybe it won't, but at least we know that we're on the same page. I
really love what you just said. I'm looking for an experience, not an experiment.
Yeah. And it puts the humanity back on, in that person.
I just think that's so, yes. I that really resonated with me when you said that, because, I think and it's fascinating because you look at the statistics of porn consumption. Okay. And a lot of porn consumption is women watching what we would refer to as like lesbian porn. Okay. We could talk forever about how I don't actually feel like what you're watching is lesbian sex. I still sometimes when I've seen it and I'm like, a dude made this up.
Yeah. We've seen a couple where like, I don't know.
Yeah, we've seen a couple and I'm like, yeah, that's not so, but listen, no, if that I think is a gateway for many women, right? Of thinking, oh, I'm watching this and, I'm feeling something when I'm watching it and I'm starting to recognize this might be an experience that I want.
Yeah.
And it's very intimidating because number one, you don't want the person that you're exploring this with to feel like they're an experiment.
Yeah.
you're probably like, shit, my body's middle-aged and it doesn't look the same. Or I've been celibate for really long and I haven't experienced sexual intimacy. Like, how do you start working through those things? I know I did. And it was very, very hard. I lived in a constant state of anxiety for a really long time.
Yeah.
What do you got? You're giving me a look.
I'm just thinking, I'm taking it in. You said something that, and then I forgot. That's why I was like, meh.
So so I think, if you are, so how do you, I guess, like, it's like, what's the first step, right? So you're acknowledging like, boy, I'm spending an awful lot of time on the lesbian side of Pornhub. And this is something I'm digging into myself. I think this might be where I want to have an experience.
Yeah.
Where do you think, Alex, you start communicating? Like maybe you start dating, or you go to, you get introduced to somebody. Let's assume that you have now moved into, maybe you go to a dating site, you connect with someone. Where do you think, to get to that sexual intimacy, where would you tell somebody to start in talking about it?
I mean, I think you would have to, one of the things would be knowing you're knowing yourself enough to be like, this is what I want, and telling that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it can be awkward and silly, but like talking through sex. I know. But here's the thing, like, we had this idea that sex should come naturally to us.
Right.
And it's not. Practice makes progress. You got to practice the thing you want to be good at. And if you want to be good at sex, you got to practice it.
You got to have a lot of sex.
You got to have sex with yourself. You got to have sex with other people. And of course, those energetic, safe, consensual spaces. And because it's it's not, I said this in my 20s, like, oh, it's just sex, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. It is an exchange of energy. Mm-hmm. You are giving someone a part of you.
Yeah. When
you don't see it, they might not feel it, but you are giving away, you are participating in a experience. It's all of the things. It's mind, body, spirit. It's one of the few things like mind, body, spirit that everything shows up. Mm-hmm. And one of those, depending on if one aspect is lesser healed than the other, that piece is going to go out the window. But anyway, that was kind of a little tangent, but yeah.
I really appreciate that. Like, you have to, there's two things that I really, when you said that, is number one, you have to know your own body. Mm-hmm. And you have to be okay spending time with your own body to know a little bit of like what feels good and what doesn't feel good, so that you can communicate to someone. Mm-hmm. And then I think that there's obviously a part of when you're in a sexual relationship with someone, the freedom to tell them this feels good or this doesn't feel good. Yeah. But before you even get there, and I guess in a little way, I'm speaking to our listeners who may have been in a religious institution that told you a message about understanding your own body.
Yeah.
So I remember being in my Catholic education, and I was told that masturbation was a sin, and that you would go to hell. It was a really quick way to go to hell. And I swear to God, I was 13 years old, and Monsignor came in and told us this. And I was like, what the fuck is masturbation? Like, I didn't even know what it was yet.
Yeah.
And then obviously figured out, over the years what it was. But, and there's, especially like, even with my daughter, because boys, it seems like we talk to boys about masturbation, and I'm being like really genderizing people right now. We talk to those who identify as male, right?
Yeah.
About masturbation. It's like, it's everywhere. It's on TV shows, it's on jokes, it's in movies. It's like, we've normalized, hey guys. And then we say it's something that they just have to do.
Well, I think it's the patriarchal idea that men deserve pleasure, but women don't.
Ooh, there's a truth bomb. Say it again.
I think it's the patriarchal idea that men are deserving of pleasure, but women are not. And
yeah.
That's fucking bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, and in the religious institution I was in, it was that not only are you not deserving of pleasure, but you're going to go to hell if you experience it.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a mind fuck.
Yeah.
So Yes. It's anyway. So there's been a lot of, and I'll pull up the name of the book because I can't think of it right now, but there is an author who wrote a book that was 100% about if you are a person who identifies as female, you need to start masturbating and you need to start talking to your children, especially if they identify as female, that masturbation is a really good thing to do.
Yeah.
There's a couple reasons she says it. Obviously, the familiarity, like Alex is talking about, with your own body and what feels good, but also to understand that an orgasm is not necessarily something another person gives you.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think they found in studies that people that identified as female, that they tended to think that when they had an orgasm with another person, it was all that person's doing and would attach all of these feelings of love instead of understanding like it's actually just what your body is going to do. Right.
Yeah.
And the ownership of your body in that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how even patriarchal lessons about your own body, it was set up that someone else actually owned it. Which is such a mind fuck. So the lesson
let us
one,
keep you disconnected from your own body so you can't actually grow and step into any kind of power.
Oh, gross. Okay. So lesson number one from Alex in owning your body is get yourself whatever you need to get and start getting familiar with what feels good and the freedom that might bring you.
Yeah. And then, you know, dismantle and unpack, like if you're uncomfortable even if you're comfortable masturbating, but you're uncomfortable telling someone else, you step into the little baby steps of being comfortable telling someone else, well, I like this. This happens to my body, this was what feels good.
That was a lesson for me, right? I don't think when you and I got to that level of our relationship, I don't know that I was able to verbalize anything to you.
I think
you're just kind of looking at me like, yeah, no.
Well, no, I mean, we learned together because there were things I couldn't verbalize either.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what else would you, I'm really thinking of, I'm trying to go back into my mind and then to also keep, a person that might be wanting to come out and have an experience. You know, I would say I think communication here is the biggest key, and how you have an experience versus an experiment. So what do you think it looks like to be, I'm on this dating site. I've been playing around with myself. You know, I kind of getting a feel of like what feels good. Now I'm sitting with a person that I think I want to start engaging in a sexual relationship with. So they don't feel like an experiment. What do I need to communicate? I know it's tough.
Yeah. Well, and this is one of those things that the fear of the unknown, that you don't know what you're going to find until you get in there, and the vulnerability, and the discomfort that can come up when you're in the middle of sex, and all of a sudden like a trigger pops up, or you have a flash of something and you are frozen, or you're dissociating, or you're like, and all of that shit is normal and real. And, you know, like, so I guess it's a little bit plan to have no plan. Yeah.
I think for me, communication is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I think we all can identify with, you know, being the person that you're so nervous, right? And listen, first time sex with anybody, it kind of sucks, right? Yeah. I mean, you're both kind of like, you bumble around until you kind of figure things out, and it's awkward and it's weird. And, so I think going in with that expectation of there's really no way around it, right? The first time you have sex with anybody, it's going to be not, maybe not awkward, but just there's no way to plan, right? Like you're saying. I think the other thing I would say for people who are, especially women, I'm talking to you, that, you know, you're in your midlife, the body, and I'm going to ask Alex, I'm going to ask you to talk about this a little bit. What is the difference between body dysmorphia and gender dysphoria? Because they're different. And I think and the purposes of this conversation, when we get to that midlife point and you're like, hey, I've been celibate and I'm about to take my clothes off in front of another person, how we see our bodies and how to sink into our bodies to receive pleasure is something important for us to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind sharing with everybody the difference between those things?
Yeah. So body dysmorphia is a basically like it's related to anxiety disorders, and you can where you kind of there's like a, for lack of a better word, like an obsession or like a deep worry or concern about the way your body looks. And so there can be, you can be checking yourself out in the mirror a lot. You can be worrying about how does this look, and asking for external validation from other people. And like there's this always this check-in is of like, is my body where it is okay? And you can't really settle into like a groundedness. And gender dysphoria is more like you're trying to align with who you are versus the container that you have.
Okay.
And so, some trans people are like, nope, totally. And I really want to be careful around saying you're born in the wrong body, because
yeah.
that's like, I still need to unpack some of that. But for me, I don't feel like I was born in the wrong body. But I do have gender dysphoria around some body parts not really being like, I don't assign like a male or a female. And then sometimes like it's, oh yeah, this is very female, or or something like that. Anyway, I'm kind of going off, but you can have both of them, at the same time. You can experience both of them at the same time. But one, again, is more about an alignment, and the other one is more about like a obsession or a concern, or like an anxiousness.
Well, and I think that midlife, right? So if you're midlife and you are looking to come out and have an experience, I know for me, that image that I saw of my body was really hard to think my body is built and it is okay for my body to receive pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for a lot of midlife comer outers, what we find is that you probably have been given some type of language around your body is not built for pleasure or good enough for pleasure. You're not a size 2 and 100 pounds with boobs that are like pointed up to the ceiling and a rock hard stomach. So you have that. And then you have this layer of, and I'm also queer and I'm going to have queer sex. And so I want to say that the first part for me in re-engaging in intimacy was acknowledging that my body, just the way that it was okay. That I did not need to be a size 2, 100 pounds, boobs pointed up to the ceiling. It was okay that I had kids and things didn't look the same. Of course, I have cellulite. I have all of these things, but it did mean having to sit in the discomfort of how I saw my own body. And then, is this body worthy of having this experience? And I'll tell you, folks, there's some days that I'm there and there's some days I'm not. Like, I don't know I'm always fascinated by people that can just drop into their body right away and be like, hey, whatever my body looks like, I'm ready for sex.
Yeah.
Where I think I'm more like, how much did I eat yesterday? And is that going to determine, right? I still have a bit of that fucked up thinking that's everyday work for me to do that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I go back and forth between, we've learned so much from Dr. Emily Nagalski's Come As You Are book. And correct me, of course, if I'm wrong, but that like she goes more into the science of like how orgasm happens and the circumstances and the situational stressors and things like that in our life. And I know it's all, of course, connected, but so like, is it, maybe this is more like a rhetorical question, but is the healing, yes, there's science and that's very real. And then there's just the energetic healing of like, of you and you.
And so I know that you've done a lot of work in body positivity of, you are now a certified life coach.
Yep.
Of helping people connect to their body. What do you want to share with our listeners, or listeners who like put queer sex over to the side a little bit, right? Because to be able to engage in that experience, I think what we're saying is, and what I've heard you say to me is, first you have to connect with your own body.
Yeah.
So where does someone start?
So a couple things that in the experiences that I've had, and also as I was trying to reconnect to myself as a trans non-binary body, and then there's different, I feel like different identities within the identity, like, there's the sexual body, there's different layers.
Okay.
That's a better. So I go to like the chakras. So like our sacral and our root chakra, and the root one is the one at the base of our spine, but our sacral chakra is like right underneath our belly button, and it's like creativity and creation, but it's also exactly where our anatomy is. And so if you've been told all these messages about your body and what it's made for or not made for, there's like a fracturing in that sacral chakra, which is one of the reasons, again, why it makes sense for me why I gravitate towards dance, because movement helps you get back into your body and not apologize for the way that your body is moving. It can also feel really, really awkward because a part of the healing process is like, it's from an outside perspective, it looks very primal and animalistic.
Dancing does. When you're trying to dance to get into your body?
Well, it can, but it like, even if you're doing some work on your own, you can, I've done breath work and like growling, like this guttural, like, cause you're feeling this vibration within your chest. And then the breath work of like staying present. And in the beginning, it is very hard and it's very intentional, and it is hard work to stay in that place, because it's so easy to, your brain, like your nervous system is just kind of like, nope, I'm going to check out. This is really uncomfortable. I don't want to be here. And then you have to practice makes progress. You are pulling it back in, like, no, we are going to breathe through this. And even, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but even when you're in a situation having sex, like having a mantra that you say to yourself, or tell the person, like, this is what I'm working through right now, and I want you to be here with me as I do this. And of course, ask them if they have something, that they have that they're, working on. But if you're both trying to connect, you're connecting to yourself and trying to connect with another person, which is an incredible amount of work.
So tell me more about, because I've taken your dance classes for years. And I remember you telling me, and you told our class at one point, that you wanted everybody to do this movement for 2 minutes in front of the mirror.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
So get naked. And I had people, there's a song by Lizzo about damn time.
I love that song.
And so again, sacral chakra, right below the belly button. And it is, so seeing yourself and then seeing yourself move can start to dislodge stuff. And you're going to have an experience. And that intentionality of looking at yourself in the mirror and then moving your hips in a circular motion, in a rhythmic motion, is, can be empowering and healing, and also make you cry or make you like, make, whatever pop up. So, I was promoting and encouraging people to do this thing, see what happens. Maybe you're really comfortable with it, and maybe but I was trying to step people in another, a deeper direction of, try this, see what happens.
Yeah. I think
when you're by yourself versus in a class.
Well, and I think that's partly like what I'm hoping people find helpful in, if you are hoping to come out and have
Mm-hmm.
experiences that I hope what people are getting from this is it really does start with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so the freedom of just letting your body move and feel again.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for, myself, after having so many years of celibacy, that was actually really hard because I think I had gotten so used to celibacy and feeling like a safety with it, almost like you really shut down yourself from even being able to think of anything in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's weird, but like, I am probably one of those women that like, I need somebody to tell me to do this to give myself permission to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have just come up on my own of let me stand naked in front of the mirror and move my hips in a circular motion intentionally
Yeah.
and like to hold it. Like, of course, I dance around my house. I go to dance classes. I, go running. I'm a pretty active person within my body, but it's the intentionality I hear you talking about.
Yeah.
Intentionally stand there naked in front of the mirror and do this movement for 2 minutes and see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a reminder that your body is there for you, not for anybody else's entertainment or pleasure. I mean, yes, they can experience pleasure from your body and that's normal and natural, but it's that part, reminder like, oh no, my body is mine. And it's this reclaiming of ownership of like all these decades of like being told that your body is for someone else's, again, entertainment,
Yeah.
you know, judging like, oh my gosh, why are they moving like that? That's too sexual. Or like you put a label or you judge it on how someone moves. Like, no, a body just moves the way it moves. There's no judgment. And then we judge ourselves on it too. So, um,
Well, and there's so many ways in which we categorize and then dehumanize bodies.
yeah.
So like there's a couple things I was listening to it's specifically even in trans bodies, right? That even for, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say it, but because it could send us down a rabbit hole, and maybe this isn't necessarily the episode for this statement. So I'm okay laying it down and we'll walk away from it and maybe come back to it another point. But if you think of the way trans identities, what you have to go through to even have your body acknowledged in something that you already know to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about the mental health process, right? Where, I fucking love these people that are like, oh my God, a person can just say they're a cat and they're a cat. And I'm like, your ignorance is really fucking showing, because to actually have, quote unquote, a diagnosis of being a trans identity, you have to go to a mental health care professional who's going to deem whether or not it's a yes or no on you saying this is my identity and who I am in my body.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's already a system that's set up to be like, yeah, you might be telling me that this is who you are, but we're going to have to set up this entire medical system to say whether you are who you say you are or not.
No one diagnoses being cisgender.
Right.
Like, fuck that shit.
So it's just, I'm also acknowledging that there are many different bodies that we don't treat the same.
Yeah.
We dehumanize them. We look at them. I mean, from the start, I always go back to like 1619 when we said, hey, if your body looks like this, well, then your body's just here for us to have our capitalist version of what we want built off of your body, because your body is less than because of the color of your skin. So,
Mm-hmm.
As we're talking about getting into the body, like I'm hyper aware right now that depending on how you categorize your body and how your body is seen, there's a whole bunch of fucked up systems that are feeding this into you of, I get to determine what your body is, not you. And so I don't mean to make like light of it at all, but also, recognizing to get into your body, there might be multiple systems that have told you what your body should be.
Yeah. I think a part of the work too could be, yes, experience your own body through physical pleasure, but then also journaling. Like, what are the messages that I received? And as a kid, go through like and write out kind of like a little timeline of, and then it will help you understand where you are now.
And maybe what messages you still receive.
Yeah.
Right. Like I still receive messages that as I age, my body is less valuable. Right. Like we had a friend and we were having a conversation with another friend who said, even your hair, don't let your hair go gray. And when I was like, why can't I let my hair go gray? She shared with me that with women at work, when their hair goes gray, there's all these studies that show that they're not listened to anymore. I'm like, for fuck's sake. So again, like not trying to simplify the level of messages depending on how your body shows up in this world, whether it's I have to go to a mental health care professional and have them sign off on something that nobody could possibly know better than me.
Right.
Right. Or the messages you get from society, or the fact that you've had two children and somehow you're seen as, hey, well, that person's already done what they needed to do and therefore no longer a sexual creature. I had read somewhere that Elvis had that with his wife, that once, I know this is crazy, but
I never heard that.
yeah, that there's I think it was in her book, Priscilla Presley, that once she had given birth to their daughter, he couldn't see her as a sexual being anymore. He could only see her as a mother and procreator.
Oh my gosh.
Like, this shit is real, of what gets put on us. And then so whether it's like, hey, it's midlife and I'm ready to have experiences, like, you got to go to a place of owning your own body again.
Yeah. And so we're talking about sex, but it's also more of the layers than that. Your body eats food, your body exercises, your body has sex, your body all list out all the things that your body does.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
So I think, and there's been a couple listeners that we've had that have written in, and they're like, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about coming out. I'm thinking about doing, whatever it is that they need to do to come out. Like, start with you. Start seeing your body as worthy of having this experience.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that work, you should be able to share with the person that you're hoping to have this experience with. You should be able to share this, right? Like, hey, this is new for me. Hey, I haven't done this before. Mm-hmm. Hey, I understand that this might bring up a whole bunch of things that we need to talk about. But if you can't have that conversation with the person that you're looking to have this experience with, I think that might tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, just in being open to whatever comes up, whatever happens, and you're trusting that person.
I'm wondering too, what happens if you have the experience and then you're like, wow, I did not think that that's what that was going to be. Or maybe you don't like it, or maybe you do. I guess you don't know until you're there.
Yeah. Cause it might not be about sexuality. It might just really just be you didn't connect with that person.
Could be.
And that's okay too.
Yeah, I want to say too that I think there's this misconception sometimes about queer sex, that it's something really different or crazy or out there. And, I guess I would just say, if that's, because I know I've read that that's one of the, and I definitely experienced this myself too, that like, you think it's that whatever is in your head of what it's going to be, right? And I think people think, especially with lesbians that have sex, that it's all about, because if you've seen it, it's like all about like still almost like trying to do heterosexual sex.
Mm-hmm.
And we've said this on here before, like, sex is not necessarily about penetration. There's lots of bodies that don't necessarily like to be penetrated, but that doesn't mean that that's not sex.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably important to define for yourself. Like, is sex penetration to you? What does it look like for it not to be?
Mm-hmm.
And just to feel, because I think of sex as pleasure, of intimacy, not necessarily the things you do.
Right.
What do you think of it as?
I think I used to, because I was taught that sex was intercourse.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell a really funny story.
Okay.
So there was, I was a rower in college, and a few of us were gay on the team that were out, at least. And one person, she grew up in a very religious family, and claimed it said that she had not had sex with her boyfriend ever. And one of our other teammates were like, "Are you sure about that?" And she was like, I have not had sex with my boyfriend. Comes out later that she had anal sex with her boyfriend, but not vaginal sex. And so she was saying, well, I haven't had sex because it's not vaginal sex.
There's a lot to unpack in that statement. I don't want to yuck somebody's yum. But talk about a level of like,
because she knew that she couldn't get pregnant.
So in her mind, sex equaled procreation.
Yeah. And so
I'm having awful flashbacks to Catholic school. Listen, you do you, but I can't define what sex is for another person. I can tell you I don't define sex as procreation.
Yeah, I think sex now is any kind of physical, romantic exchange of its mind, body, spirit.
That's sex.
Yeah.
I would agree. I think if you said, well, is sex having an orgasm? Well, there's plenty of times you have sex that you don't have one.
Right.
Otherwise, I know a lot of women with their husbands that are not having sex.
He is.
She's not. So I wouldn't define it by having an orgasm either. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't define it as penetration, because I've had sex with you lots of times that have not involved any type of penetration at all.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that you have to be able to have the freedom to say, like, that's not the end all be all. Mm-hmm. I always go to that episode of Sex and the City. I don't know if you'll remember this one. I understand that Carrie is hugely problematic character.
Yeah.
But I still love the show.
Yeah. Me too.
And she, at one point, they talk about jackrabbit sex, which I think we've talked about on there before. Like, if that's sex, like, oh my God, like what woman would ever want to, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're out there and you like jackrabbit sex. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to Google that episode.
Is our version of that just the down and dirty sex? Where it's just like quick in and out?
I didn't realize we were going to share that.
I am sorry.
No, it's okay. I think lots of couples have, hey, I'm, and I would define down and dirty sex, because you would ask me, because that's what I call it. I'm like, Alex, are you down for some down and dirty sex? And you're like, what does that actually mean to you?
Yeah.
And I told you, to me, it means it's like late at night. We're both like, and it's not down and dirty drunky sex.
Right.
That's a whole different thing. But down and dirty sex to me is, maybe it's like a Wednesday night and it's like work fucking sucks shit and the house is a wreck and I've got to get, we got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but you just get into bed together and you're like, oh my God, I need to like feel you and feel close to you and have this experience. But if you drag this out for me, I might kill you.
It just needs to
happen.
We can get it done.
Right. That's down and dirty. That's at least what you and I call it.
Yeah.
You want it down and dirty.
Yeah. I apologize. Did I just out you?
That's okay. I'm learning how to be more vulnerable and open.
Talking about body and sex.
Hey, this is a step in a good direction for me to talk about this stuff. I've really been conditioned not to, or to think that there's something wrong.
Well, and I was thinking earlier, actually, I wonder if a part of, during midlife, when you are going into these spaces, maybe you were asking yourself, because I had sex. The first time I had intercourse, at least I was 15.
Yeah.
And so it's like, maybe it's asking yourself, what would I would have wanted to been told by a parent or an adult or a trusted person? Like, what would I have needed to know?
Yeah.
And if I don't feel comfortable, I was told nothing about it. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll go figure this out.
Yeah.
And so you have that option, of course, to then, as in your 40s or when, however old you are, be like, well, like, what do I need to know? And what do I need to share? And what would I wanted to hear?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'll answer that question. I think what I probably needed to hear was listen to your body, listen and trust your body. Yeah. Your body, Kim, knows. Mm-hmm. I think that would have helped me a great deal. And I hope that that's the conversation. And listen, like there's so many conversations to have, right, around consent, and so I don't want to go down I'm not ignoring that, but also that's not necessarily what we're here talking about today. We're talking about emotionally. Like, let's assume, yes, I've given consent.
Right.
I want to be here. I want to do this. But what I wish I would have known was it was okay to say, yes, I've consented to doing this. And why does it still not feel right? And I wish the message I would have got was, Kim, listen to your body, because my body was telling me, right? My body was telling me like something doesn't feel right when I'm with a body that looks and feels male.
Yeah. And when there's self-betrayal, then there's trauma.
Yeah. And so when and inevitably, because that was trauma for me, I can name it now, is nothing to do with the partners that I was with, but I inevitably bled out that trauma onto them, right? Because they were having sex with someone like, why is this girl crying in a mess and then wants to break up with me the second after we've done this? And that inevitably caused them trauma. Right. Because here they were, well, she said that she wanted to do these things with me and I've got a fucking mess on my hands now. Right. Which inevitably I ended up not being a mess. I just ghosted, which is horrible to do to another person.
Yeah. I did the same.
I did that. I absolutely did that, where I was like, and also that I could experience feelings of love with people, but that the body just, I could not make it work no matter how much I loved a person. And that inevitably caused harm to people that I didn't mean to do, but I did. So I wish that was part of the message I got, was listen to your body. Your body knows. Trust yourself in your body, that if this doesn't feel right, you can absolutely say so. So I wish I had that information. I wish I had information on what being gay was. Right? Because there's just not a ton of information around queer sex education. I mean, my goodness, like in Colorado, we just finally passed yesterday that you can have references to LGBTQ in schools and in history books. So I can't even get into sex education. And we need to do an entire episode about why you need to have queer sex education.
Yeah.
Because
especially for teens,
because if you're only teaching your kids about heterosexual experiences, you are going to have, because I was that kid where I'm like, well, I understand what you're telling me sex is, but why does it feel so wrong? And there was nothing to fill that void for me. So I walked around for a good period of time thinking I was totally fucked up.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. I was just gay.
Yeah. And then you end up kind of returning back to the thing that feels not great because you think it's the only option.
The message of my life was put your head down and just work harder. That didn't work. Interpret how you like.
Just keep putting the square into the circle. Eventually it'll work.
Eventually it's going to work. So when we talk about like queer sex education, like that's why I think it's so important.
Yeah.
And listen, if you start learning about queer sex and you're like, yeah, that's not making sense to me, go do heterosexual sex education, but don't assume that heterosexual sex education is what's going to work for everyone. Because otherwise you got a bunch of queer kids running around either self-loathing, self-hating, internalizing that trauma and bleeding out their harm onto everyone else.
And go back to our statistics that we probably say here at some point, but we definitely go into during our training. 1 in 5 Gen Zs are LGBTQ. That's a lot of kids. So
that is a lot of kids.
LGBTQ kids have LGBTQ sex.
Yes, they do.
LGBT people and people. Okay.
Yeah, they have experiences.
Yeah.
So I guess, and I can almost like, can't you almost just like hear the parents in your head, but I don't know how to talk to my kid about queer sex. Yes, you do.
Yeah, you do.
Yes, you do. And if you're telling yourself you don't,
reach out to us for coaching.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of resources for you to reach out to.
Yeah.
And also like there might be a little bit of a bias in you if you think that you can't talk about this.
Correct.
So should we just lay that down and walk away from it now?
We're just going to lay it down like a piece of sushi.
Interpret how as you like. Okay. Are we through everything you wanted to talk about for this one? I'm hungry.
Oh.
Does that mean...
What do you want to eat?
Interpret how you like. We did say that this is not for kids.
This is a zinger episode. This one's good.
I can't believe we had to talk about down and dirty.
Well, yeah, oh, yeah. Um,
Anything else you want, or maybe we can make this a two-parter and we can pause here. What do you think?
yeah, I would like to say one of the things that was coming up is that, you know, of course, we talked about our bodies being worthy of pleasure, but you're returning to this freedom. Before, I remember Dr. J telling me in some of the work that we did, go back to who you were before the world or before anybody told you what to do with your body and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's you're that trusting that freedom is there. It's always been there. You just now have to open your mind to, oh, I can be free in my body. I just have to figure out what that really feels like.
Yeah. I'm going to say this is probably going to be an ongoing conversation that we do on here because what is it? I mean, we've talked about a lot of things that may need to happen to have freedom in your body. So I guess like the first step I would tell anybody is acknowledge that your body is worthy of freedom. Mm-hmm. However, that body shows up, and really work at deconstructing what those messages you got about your body are, whether it's size, whether it's ability, whether it's color, whether it's whatever it is. Bodies are worthy of pleasure, period.
They're
built for pleasure.
And they're built for pleasure. On that note.
Thanks for listening in, Balls of Magic. We'll be back with more on this later. I love you, Alex.
I love you too, Kimmy.
Okay.